Well, Jack, around 3 months ago, I went on our Survivor fantasy draft, and with the first overall pick, I selected Andy. And the backlash during the premiere was absurd. I was mocked in our group chat, and those comments extended to social media as well. I made an entire video on TikTok predicting Andy as the winner of Survivor 47. And there were many comments that I wrote down. People said things like, "This aged poorly. This is a brutal take watching the episode. Uh-oh, Andy had a bad episode 1. And 3 months later, here we are. And as per usual, I've been proven correct. Welcome into Survivor Analytics. My name is Clyde. I'm the true expert. With me, as always, is the voice of the people, Jack. Jack, how's it going?
Mamma mia. I knew you were going to come in smug. Listen, this is a tough episode for me. I mean, I am more than willing to give Andy his flowers this week. I really am. This is arguably the best episode of Survivor, strategically speaking, that we've ever watched. Is that fair?
It's high up there in terms of the best strategic moves that we've covered. I think there's a couple that I would put ahead of this. I think I liked the Emily boot at Final 7 of Survivor 45, which I'm sure you remember every detail of.
Yes.
It was essentially Julie playing the idol and Dee pretending that she didn't know about it. I thought that was a
Right.
better move that might be influenced by the fact that Dee actually went on to win the season, but this could be up there.
Yep.
This episode gave me a lot of validation. I feel like all season I've been holding out, waiting for Andy to finally make this big play and work as the smiling assassin that he claims himself to be. And we finally saw it this week. I don't know if Andy will go on to win Survivor. I still think that Rachel should be the front runner, given that she has all of these advantages that production handed to her on a silver platter.
Yeah.
But if you're asking me who is the best player this season, I think Andy has a serious argument for the best strategic mind.
I mean, I think that the strategy here, it's one thing to pull off a plan, right? Or to pull off a blindside, but to spell it out as explicitly as Andy did ahead of time, to have a heist preparation montage, right? And for it all to work out as you worked to make it turn out. That's pretty darn impressive. And yeah, I mean, we'll get into it. I was hard on Andy to start, and you made the right call. I mean, I cannot take that away from you. Where I'm really struggling this week is I'm a Teeny fan.
Yeah. Did you take Teeny in the first round?
I don't remember if I took Teeny or John. Remember John in the first round, but top 2, right? I wanted Teeny and I got Teeny. It was a hard episode for me to watch as a Teeny fan because boy, did they not handle themselves very well, right? I think that outburst or series of outbursts is going to continue to bite them in the butt.
We'll be diving more into the Teeny dynamic later, but I'll just say on the surface with it, this is the episode for me that solidified Teeny as someone that cannot win the season. Out of the 6 remaining players going into next week, I think you can make an argument for Rachel, Andy, Sam, and Genevieve as all potential winners. Like, they have a storyline in place.
Yeah. Teeny and Sue, absolutely not.
Teeny and Sue are dead players walking at this point. And I think the other 4 are now in competition to see which of us can sit with Teeny and Sue at the end, because I don't see them getting targeted anytime soon. But we can start from the beginning, where we open with this scene between Sue and Caroline. Caroline highlights at the beginning that there's almost a mother-daughter dynamic between herself and Sue. You get that funny moment where Sue's entire face is covered with mud, and she tells Caroline that there's a smudge on her cheek.
All right. Like, we have to talk about it, right? It's all over social media. It's all over the group text. Listen, Sue has to know that she's doing it. She has to, right? She initially, right, she was doing some dirt contouring. It was nasty, but whatever. Now it's all over her face. By tribal, she looked like she was trying to do like Dia de los Muertos face paint to make her look like she was a skull between the dark at the tip of her nose and her cheekbones to make her look like she didn't have cheeks, right? She looked skull-like by the end of the episode. And can someone on production just get her a wet wipe? Like, it's ridiculous, and I'm sick of it.
Do you think she's doing this on purpose then? She's getting
She's
the mud and
got to be.
tactically placing it there?
She's got to be doing it intentionally, but I cannot fathom going 22 days on the island covered in dirt, right? There's an ocean right there. Wash your face.
I don't know. I guess production could give her a wet wipe, but if she's
Should.
the one putting it on herself, then it won't matter. She would just take that thing and throw it out the window. But with that relationship between Caroline and Sue, I want to give Caroline some credit here. She's going to go home later this episode, but I'm very high on Caroline as a player. I don't think she was the most entertaining character on the season. I think she kind of fell into the background, but her relationship with Sue is really impressive. Like, this is someone that Caroline flipped against at the final 9. She votes out Gabe and goes behind Sue's back. And after that move, she's able to re-ingratiate with Sue and set herself up as Sue's number 1 ally. And I think that might be the most important alliance in the entire game because everyone wants to sit at the end with Sue. I think Sue is widely perceived right now as the easiest beat on the board. There's a segment later in the episode where the Operation Italy Alliance is thinking, who are they going to vote out because Rachel won immunity.
Right.
And they bring up every possible option on who to eliminate except Sue. Her threat level is so low and she is so disrespected by the cast that she's not even worth bringing up as a potential target.
That's good for Caroline, I guess. I mean, the props I want to give Caroline are that I think she has the most refreshing, bright, delightful outlook on the game, right? Somebody else makes a move that she wanted to make. She's not complaining. She's going, oh, darn, I wish I'd made that. That was a really good move, right? Someone else wins a challenge. Hey, good job. She leaves the game and goes, I've been thinking about it. I'm pretty sure it was Andy. Good job. I'm lucky I made it this far, right? Her exit interview is really just cheerful.
It's also insightful in that I think she says in that exit interview that she knew there was a risk of Andy flipping in that tied situation and knocking one of them out. So it seems like she's someone that's aware of what's going on. She might not always be able to anticipate the actions of others, but she can think of the possibility at the very least.
Yeah, I guess I'm surprised to hear you high on her because I didn't get the sense that she was ever a very proactive player. Or like it never felt like she was trying to make a move as much as she was trying to be a part of things.
Like, I don't think Caroline had the highest of highs. She doesn't
No.
have a move like Genevieve leading the Saul blind side at Final 10.
Right.
But Caroline was consistently within the majority. Like, she was a part of the consensus plan at every tribal council that she attended this season up until this week where she goes home. So
Right.
for me, it kind of depends on what do you value in Survivor. Appreciate more of a roller coaster game, high highs and low lows, or do you appreciate that consistent agency? And I think that's something to respect with Caroline.
Yeah.
I'll also throw out that later in the episode, you get that all women's alliance that comes together of Caroline, Rachel, Teeny, and Sue. And I think Caroline might have been in the best position within that alliance had they taken control. Like, if that
Oh,
group
yeah.
goes to the final 4, Rachel is clearly the target at that point in the game. And then Caroline's just one round away from going to the end with Teeny and Sue and winning the whole thing. So I think she had a good long-term position as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. But let's move on because she's not in the game anymore. Genevieve apologizes to Andy for essentially saying things that I would have said.
Whoa, okay. Things that I would never say.
And basically, Genevieve's strategy now, after making her big move with Saul, is to kill her threat level. She says she's going to play possum, puppy, giraffe, elephant, whatever it takes to, she talks a lot about how she's the next to go home. She sort of mends that relationship, setting us up nicely for Operation Italy. And then we have another Genevieve conversation, which is Genevieve and Teeny are talking on the beach, and Genevieve says that Rachel is a pretty big threat and that she'd be hard to beat at the end. Because Genevieve is talking about what she would do if she was on the jury. She says, I don't know if I could vote for you if Rachel is still in the game. And Teeny goes, is that a threat? What?
It's the first big red flag for Teeny this episode because the entire reason why Genevieve makes that comment on Rachel's jury chances is because Teeny straight up asks her, would you vote for me or would you vote for Rachel in a final tribal? Like
Yeah.
Genevieve is just giving her honest opinion there. I don't see that as a threat. You can criticize Genevieve's comments after that altercation. She says that Teeny uses emotions as a weapon in the game. So that's not as kind, but I didn't see that as a threat at all. This felt like the first time where Teeny started to spiral this season.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's threatening here, right, it's you asking someone who they would vote for on the jury because you're gauging whether or not somebody is worth voting out. If you're someone who says, "Yeah, I'm a lock for you if I go out," well, guess what? I'm not gonna be heartbroken if you go home then, because then you're on the jury and you're gonna vote for me, right? And so Genevieve's not in a position to say anything but the honest truth or lie to, appease Teeny. Yeah, that was the first, you said it, the first red flag.
And
But
I'll also say that with Teeny, we see Teeny get a bit power hungry this week. They make comments on how the Operation Italy Alliance is having their last supper following the reward.
oh, we'll get to that.
And it seems like Teeny has been out of the mix all season.
Yeah.
There are many instances where Teeny is just excluded from the vote and has no real clue what's going on. This feels like one of the first points in the post merge where Teeny's in a majority and they have some agency, and they don't really know how to handle that power. It gets to their head, and I think we see that with the outcome of the reward challenge. But do you want to go to reward right now?
Yes. All right. So we go to the reward. The reward is an overnight at Sanctuary where good things happen for Italian. And then we get Jeff's Italian impression. He starts doing the hand, starts doing the pinch. Did you notice this?
I didn't see the pinch.
He does the pinch and he goes, we got pizza, a bunch of different kinds of pizza. We've got pasta, Caesar salad. And this is where I wish I had the bandwidth to do the soundboard, tiramisu. And he leans into it. And so I'll say this, pretty good reward.
Well, the big question with the reward is, will this reward check off a potential food item that Sam has never eaten before?
Well,
It's the constant game on Survivor. I went back and looked at the list. The contenders still on the board are pineapple, watermelon, eggplant, zucchini, squash, and heirloom tomatoes. And I don't think any of those came up later on in the episode.
but something does.
Oh, the tiramisu.
Yeah, he hadn't eaten tiramisu. But we'll get to that. So the challenge itself, guess what? It's an obstacle course. Womp womp. Obstacle course ending with the basketball free throw onto a ledge that Survivor just loves. And they always change the ledge. Have you noticed this? Sometimes it's a circle. Sometimes it's circles going up a pillar. This time it was a couple of railings. It comes down to Sam versus Rachel. Sam wins out and finds out it's an overnight with letters from home. I famously don't care about that part of the show, but it does add the emotional component to the selection. He gets to take 2 people and leave 4 at camp.
I want to say, with Sam only allowed to pick 2 players, I thought that this was kind of ridiculous. With 7 players left, if you win the reward, this should be an advantage. This should be an opportunity for you to get a majority alliance together. And instead, you're putting yourself outside the majority and allowing 4 other players to conspire back at camp. So I didn't like production's decision here in terms of the number of players that Sam could select.
Yeah, that's fair. How did you feel about his selections? He says Andy because he had promised if he won a reward to take Andy along, and he always does what he says he'll do. And Genevieve, because I guess Genevieve likes Italian food.
So obviously the selections are the right ones because it ends up working out later in the episode, right? But in the moment, I was shocked that Sam took Genevieve on the reward. Like, in my mind, Sam already has Genevieve locked as an ally, working for him. So you don't need to impress her further by bringing her to eat all this Italian food. I thought Sam would have been better off taking Andy and maybe someone like Caroline.
Mhm.
Because I think Caroline's an influential player that could convince Sue to do some things.
Yeah.
My worry here with that trio going on reward was that when they return to camp, everyone will suspect that three to work together. Like, it's really impressive that they were able to convince the group otherwise, but that's a major risk that you're playing by taking your number one ally with you.
Whether it was intentional calculus or not will remain to be seen, and maybe we'll get an answer to that someday. But whether Andy was the right choice because of this perception of his game as lackluster, right? Because everybody back at camp goes, no way Andy's flipping. They're going to try and strong arm him. They're going to wine and dine him, as I think that phrase was used 9 times this episode. But no way he's flipping. He's loyal to the end, right? And so, obviously, the right selection. They go off to Sanctuary, and then we get the reaction, right? And how about we do the reaction and then we go to Sanctuary? Does that work for you?
Yeah, you can take the lead on the reaction since this is your fantasy pick.
Teeny, my fantasy pick, who thank God is still in the game at least, still getting me points, still getting confessionals, right? Teeny is furious. Says while they are still at the challenge that this will be the last supper for Sam and his allies, that they should have been taken because they are someone Sam wants to work with, that this is a bad move. It sucks. Go back to camp. They're still going. They say, literally, Teeny says, oh, maybe I should take a minute so that I don't say something I'm going to regret. Does not then take that moment and says a whole bunch of stuff that I'm sure they are regretting. Long rant, doing an impression of Sam at one point, talking about how it's so dumb. Last Supper is used again. Everyone else is a sympathetic ear, right? Everyone wants Sam to go and recognizes that Sam is a threat, but it is a long, long outburst that continues, I think, for a couple of confessionals and 2 locations. Tough to see, but at the same time, to give Teeny a tiny bit of credit, or a teeny bit of credit, if you will.
Ooh.
They have been very open about how they are a heart on their sleeve player, for better or worse. And I can respect and give credit to them for not suppressing how they're feeling and being open about it, right? This is a frustrating thing to have happen, especially if you're hungry, especially with the letters from home, right? Which for some reason people want to watch. I'm so bitter about it, dude. I don't like the family
I know you
stuff.
hate the letters from home.
When you go on Survivor one day, I'm going to write you one and it's just going to say, I hated doing this.
Dude, that'd be so funny. Can you imagine? You're my single letter from home, and they need to cut this segment from the show, is all that you wrote.
I just write a long list of expletives that they can never put on the air.
No, just write your list of all of your feedback on New Era Survivor. That way
It's
they
just
have
a
to include
drawing
it in
of
the
Jeff
episode.
Probst doing an obstacle course.
It's Dear Clyde, how many knots have you undone? How many obstacle courses have you completed so far?
Does Jeff have any wrinkles in person? But so Tina goes on the rant, and then we see the conversation about a final 4 of women, the 4 women that are not Genevieve, essentially. So I'll say this, that'd be kind of nice.
You like that alliance moving forward?
No, because it's not going to happen. It's not going to do well, but it'd be kind of nice to be like, oh, 3 women on the final tribal council. That's
I
pretty cool.
guess. My issue with it is that this group of 4 plus Andy keeps calling themselves the Underdog Alliance. No one expects us to win. And yet they've been in the majority for multiple weeks now. And I think
Yeah.
the players outside that alliance are way more interesting characters than the
Uh-huh.
members of the Underdog Alliance. Like going into next week, on one side, we have Andy, Genevieve, and Sam, who I would say are the 3 most entertaining people remaining in the game. And on
Yeah.
the other side, the group that I think is probably going to win that battle of Sue, Teeny, Rachel don't have a lot of personality in their edit. Like out of those 3, I think Teeny probably has the most character moments. I don't know. I just have a difficult time rooting for that group given how they talk about themselves as well as the surrounding edit with them.
Yeah, you can't call yourselves the underdogs when you're 5 of the 7 players on the island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd also say with Teeny's outburst, first I'll take a positive spin on it, and then I can lean into Teeny a little bit.
Please.
The positive spin is that this is good for Survivor. I think Survivor is at its best when you have people that don't like each other. It's good to have disagreements on the island. That's just part of life. You're not always going to get along with everybody. And Teeny is honest in the fact that part of their resentment comes from like almost Sam's archetype. He's the popular class clown jock that Teeny probably disliked in the past and is projecting some of those feelings onto Sam, which is funny because this is the second time this season where we have a one-sided rivalry. We saw this earlier with Sue hating Kyle for no real reason.
Yeah.
So I think the conflict is good for the show itself. It added a lot to the entertainment level of this episode. As for the negatives, I think Teeny is in no real position to be pissed at Sam for this decision.
No.
They keep saying that this is a horrible game move. I'm the one that they should be trying to impress. Why didn't they pick me? But that morning, Teeny just had a disagreement with Genevieve, who is Sam's number one ally. In my mind, Teeny has already burned the bridge with that alliance, yet they still want to be wined and dined and treated like royalty by them. So it makes no sense from that perspective. And it's also weird in that Teeny has went on rewards earlier in the season. I saw a lot of people comparing this instance to Liz in 46, but a lot of people criticized Liz for her reaction to not getting picked for that reward. But there was some legitimacy there in that Liz was allergic to coconuts. She didn't eat the entire season. And up until that episode, she had not been selected for a reward yet. So she was literally operating on zero food. Teeny, on the other hand, has had the opportunity to go on a couple of these now, and I'm not sure if this was resentment based out of the fact that it's food that they're missing out on, or if it's the letters from home. So even if you hate the letters from home, you can at least thank Survivor for the fact that by including these letters, you create more interpersonal drama amidst the cast. So I don't think Teeny's really in a spot to be upset here.
So that's what's happening on the campsite. Another just tiny little side note. The amount of bad mouthing that Sue does to Kyle in this episode just puts a horrible taste in my mouth. Not that I'm a huge Kyle fan. I mean, I liked him, but I wasn't, and I liked that he was a meat boy, but he wasn't my number one, right? He was the last pick in our draft, wasn't he? Or near the bottom?
That was Gabe.
Gabe was at the end. Kyle was near the bottom, though, I think.
I think he was like second round or something. You're testing
Yeah.
my knowledge of every
of our
draft.
draft. But Kyle was such a nice and friendly presence on the island that continuing to see Sue trash talk him this week was really a bummer.
Oh, I enjoyed it. I'm definitely Team Tsunami moving forward.
Jeez. Well, I just wanted to give some props to Kyle since I wasn't here last week. Anyway, at Sanctuary, where good things happen, they have their pizza, they have their pasta, they have their tiramisu, and then Andy calls a beanbag meeting, and he pitches Operation Italy. Shall I break down the basics of it?
Yeah.
The basic premise: convince the 4 ladies that either Sam or Rachel has an idol. Convince them to split the vote across the 2 of them, creating a 2-2 split, and then Andy, Genevieve, and Sam will vote out Rachel. And he also tells them that Rachel has a block of vote. Definitely the block of vote. I'm not sure about the idol, actually.
I don't think he knows about the idol. I don't think anyone outside of Rachel is aware of the idol. So I think it was only the vote block.
So that's the basics of the plan. We get a full Ocean's 11 edit of them spending the night at Sanctuary making this plan. Andy and the editing team must be best friends because they have so much fun with Andy and they don't do anything for anybody else, right?
Yeah, it's great.
It's really fun, but it's so one-sided. If he doesn't win, it's going to be ridiculous, right?
Well, I think for Andy now, his 2 options moving forward are win Survivor 47 or get invited back for Survivor 50 and win that season. It doesn't make a big difference to me because he'll be on my fantasy team either way. He's an absolute lock for my roster moving forward. But I love this editing segment. I feel like you mentioned the editing team has had a lot of fun this season. We got the spider shots with Andy
Yep.
earlier. We got the he's all that moment with Andy. And
Yep.
now there's the Ocean's 11 saga. This is a very high difficulty move to actually pull off for a couple reasons. And Genevieve outlined some of these later in the episode.
Yep.
One of them is all of the advantages in the game, because all of those advantages are concentrated in the quote unquote underdog alliance that holds two idols and a vote block between the four of them.
Right.
Not very underdoggy, if you ask me. So all of the advantages throw a major twist into this. It's also complicated by the fact that this plan only goes through if Andy can convince the majority to do a split vote where he is voting in the three-person group.
Right.
In a group of five, when you split it, it'll be 3 and 2. If Andy's in that two-person split, then his flip is basically ineffective because you end up with a 3-3-1 in that instance.
God, I did not do that math right. That's such a good point. I was thinking about the end result being by default 2-2-3, not potentially 3-1-3. Oh, wow.
It's really hard for Andy because he needs to go back to camp and say, not only should we split the vote, but you should let me vote against the person who we're knocking out, even though I just spent the entire afternoon with Sam and Genevieve.
That's a great point.
The fact that Andy pulls this off is really impressive, but I do think some of the members of the Underdog Alliance are definitely at fault there. We can head back over to camp, but before going there, the last thing I'll throw out from the sanctuary is that Genevieve gives her spiel on what Survivor means to her. It's kind of her storyline of the season, this idea that she started the game closed off from people and making cold-blooded strategic decisions, and now she's opening herself up to people. She says the reason why she closed people out was because she was so emotionally damaged from the Keyshawn blindside. This is the second time that Genevieve has brought up the Keyshawn vote, and we did not see a relationship between
No.
Genevieve and Keyshawn in the entire pre-merge. Like,
No.
if this was such a big plot point, why didn't the edit show more of it earlier in the season where Genevieve got 3 total confessionals through the first 3 episodes? So that's just a minor rant with me.
No, it's a good point.
I'd also throw out, because I got to give Andy more props. I didn't mention this earlier.
Of course.
I think you also need to credit Andy for his awareness in the game, where he was correct in realizing that I'm number 5 in a 5-person alliance. Because as he's scheming
Yeah.
to flip against that group, the other 4 are carving out the core of the alliance at the same time. So I think he's a very self-aware player, which you might not have thought at the beginning of the season. Do you want to do the immunity challenge and then circle back to the end of Operation Italy?
Yeah, so let's ruin the math here because they want Rachel gone, but guess what? There's a challenge and she's a meat boy. So we get to the immunity challenge. They balance, they walk with a ball on a pole, they move some skulls through a maze, and then they roll balls onto targets. I hate what I've become. I wish I had any enthusiasm for these challenges. They're so generic at this point. Well, the one thing I was going to say is the nuance of this is that where in the past the ball rolling stage has been oftentimes roll a ball through a maze, avoid some holes in a maze, right? There's a lot of that sort of stuff. This time it was roll 3 balls onto a paddle with no rim and land them in 3 of the 5 holes on the paddle. So pretty challenging stuff. But what were you going to say?
I only had one significant note from this challenge, and it's not even related to the logistics of the obstacle course itself.
Okay.
It's the perspective of Genevieve and Sam, where for the two of them, in order for Operation Italy to go through, they cannot win this challenge. Because if one of them wins, then there's no incentive for the Underdog Alliance to split the vote,
Yeah.
and then the other one goes home. So I was curious if the two of them were throwing it or if they had the mentality of, I don't know if Andy's actually going to go through with this plan. I need to try to win just to preserve myself for another day.
I feel like Sam was giving it his all anyway, right? I don't think Sam's the type to take it easy on a challenge, right? He says in this episode he can't win an immunity challenge for anything, but he can win reward challenges, right?
Rachel wins that challenge. Quick question for you.
Yeah.
If Rachel does not win individual immunity, do you think she goes home this week? Keep in mind she has the idol and the vote block in her pocket.
I think it would come down to Andy's salesmanship, right? Because he would have to sell Rachel on it. And I think because of her immunity, he doesn't have to convince her as much. I don't know. I feel like she would have been more willing to use something if she was in danger, right? She offers at one point to use the block vote this week. And Andy says, no, no, save it for 6. Another great little move by Andy, by the way. So I'm going to say no. Do you think she'd go?
I'm not sure. It's tough to say, but I think there's a real chance that she's the one that gets sent home. At the very least, she's the target of Operation Italy, which is scary for Rachel.
Yeah.
And I have a whole rant about Rachel for the end of the episode. I still think she's going to win the season. And as Survivor 47 is progressing, the lower and lower I'm going on Rachel as a potential winner. I think we could be looking at a bottom 10 or bottom 5 winning game in the history of the show. Worse than Natalie White, who we covered on Survivor Samoa.
Well, you just really hate that she's gotten all these things for free.
But we can go to post-tribal discussions where Operation Italy is in full motion.
Yeah.
Andy's talking to the Underdog Alliance and telling them that Genevieve might have an idol. We got to split the vote, which is a very difficult task because Andy is telling them that we need to put 3 votes on Genevieve and 2 on Sam. Teeny hates Sam.
Yeah.
So convincing Teeny to go through with this plan is another complexity of this round.
Huge challenge. I think Teeny would not have done it if not for Genevieve's excellent performance.
That's what I want to hit on next. So you talk a little bit about this.
So Teeny goes to Genevieve and Sam. Sam is there as well. Teeny basically goes to Genevieve and is like, it's you. And Genevieve goes, great. Let me know if they change their minds. And Teeny's like, are you saying what I think I'm saying? Genevieve says, yes. And Teeny says, show me the proof. And this is where it's perfectly executed. Genevieve flashes the handmade idol made from components of a defunct idol as well as some other bracelets and beads and stuff. Flashes it. And then Sam, and this is truly art level work, goes, oh, someone's coming. Genevieve shoves it back down. They start walking away, right? She's shown it. She's keeping it hidden. Absolutely perfect execution. Lands the convincing moment. So let me ask you this, though. Why does Andy need to convince the underdogs to go 3-2, Genevieve 3, Sam 2?
I was thinking the same thing. Because if you want to appease Teeny, then you could say, let's do 3 on Sam, 2 on Genevieve. Like, it works either way.
Yeah.
But I feel like they already rolled with this storyline of Genevieve holding an idol, so you'd want to put the majority on her to flush that item.
Yeah.
I'd say when you look at the success of Operation Italy, someone needs to be at fault here. And I think the player that you can point to as the most responsible for the destruction of their own alliance is Teeny.
Yeah.
I think Teeny was so determined to vote out Sam at this point in the episode that there was almost an element of confirmation bias where they were looking just for any piece of information that would result in Sam going home.
Right.
And if Genevieve holds an idol, that means the vote bounces off Genevieve, lands on Sam, Sam goes out the door.
Yeah. So I have one more thing to note before Tribal, and that is the Caroline and Sue moment, where essentially Caroline and Sue go through Genevieve's stuff looking for the idol, and Sue says to Caroline, I will burn my idol to save you. Caroline says, no, we'll be fine. And Sue's like, I don't know. I don't feel great about this. I just think that's worth noting, especially considering what happens right before the vote is read. But do you have anything else before Tribal?
I'd say that I watched Caroline's post-game interview where she said that she was the player who was campaigning the most for their alliance to not use any advantages. Like, Caroline knew that Andy was someone that was itching for a big move. And in her mind, she thought that they could paint this potential Genevieve elimination as a stamp on Andy's resume and say, good job, Andy. You were the one that came up with the idea for the split vote, and we didn't need to use any advantages in the process. Use that to skyrocket his threat level and then knock him out in the next round.
Yeah.
In reality, she didn't account for the fact that Andy might just bail on the plan in its entirety.
Yeah, Andy's big move was happening, and it wasn't that move. Anything else before Tribal?
I'm good to go to Tribal. Another rough look for Teeny there.
Yeah, I have a quote. Quote, a pecking order has been decided. I mean, Teeny comes out swinging yet again and is just, they feel really good. They are convinced, confirmation bias, like you said, or tunnel vision, if you prefer. Sam, their nemesis, for some reason, I gotta be honest, I'm not really sure why. Is it just the reward? Is that it?
It's that and Sam's vibe. I don't get the sense that Sam is the type of person that Teeny probably hangs out with outside of Survivor.
Yeah, I mean, so Teeny takes some big swings. There's a whole lot of looks around. Do you have anything else before the vote and the thing that happens right before the vote? Because that's what I really want to talk about.
Yeah, let's talk about that moment before the vote.
Jeff asks for idols, and Sam turns to Genevieve and says, use it, I'll be okay. Or I'm okay with the result, or I'm okay with the outcome, or something like that. Absolutely fantastic. I loved this move so much, trying to bait somebody else into wasting their stuff. Oh my God, it was fantastic. I wish someone had fallen for it.
So I didn't see this as Sam trying to bait another person into playing an idol.
Really?
I saw this more as a long-term move for Sam and Genevieve to continue to flash this fake as a real thing in the subsequent rounds. Because if someone else plays an idol, there is a risk of what if it goes on to Caroline and then our entire plan is blown up. I think they don't want anyone using any advantages at this stage of the game. And
Oh,
now going into next week, that pair has an idol between them. And my fear is that you'll have these two alliances of three, the underdogs versus the big dogs plus Andy, who might be a big dog now. It depends if you're willing to give him that kind of credit. My fear is that there's the fake idol and Sam or Genevieve wins individual immunity. In that case, the underdogs might look to Andy as the potential target at Final Six because they're too scared of the other players.
well, I will throw out that in the next time on, somebody does say that idol is fake. Somebody figures it out in the next episode.
Oh, okay.
So, um, I think part of it could be a feint, right? Trying to draw out an idol. I think there is something to it. It's already in the ether, right? Teeny knows about it. Andy's been hinting about it. So he's trying to get, I bet, Sue to play her idol. I think there's something to that, but who knows?
So you want to hear the final vote?
Yes, final vote. Go
It's
for
a
it.
3-2-2 plurality vote. 3 on Caroline from Andy, Sam, Genevieve, 2 on Genevieve, 2 on Sam. Caroline is sent out of the door in 7th place. And this proves a very important lesson for Survivor production. And that is you do not need advantages and twists and gimmicks to make this show entertaining.
Yeah.
You said at the beginning, this is one of the best episodes and one of the best strategic maneuvers that we've seen in a long time on Survivor. And it's one that only relies on social relationships and strategy within the game. It doesn't depend on gimmicks that production inserts through journeys.
You're right.
So I feel like Jeff and production sees the new era as this chaotic game where they want to try to insert as many things as possible to make it entertaining. But this episode proves that if you just take a step back and let the players play, the game becomes interesting on its own. And I think this is way better than a lot of those gimmick-infused episodes that we've seen in the past where the result is technically shocking, but it feels artificial. Like a perfect example is the Tiana boot this season, where Rachel was allowed to just up and leave a tribal council due to a gimmick. Yes, that was high stakes, but it didn't feel the same as this.
Maybe the hard part, right, is to compare this to your favorite sport, baseball. Something that the commissioner of baseball pitched this week in kind of a throwaway comment to get people riled up was the idea of a golden at bat, which is in a crunch time situation, right? Your team's down by a run or tied at the bottom of the ninth, one batter left, basically saying instead of sending up the next person to bat, you get to send whoever you want up to bat. You get to send your best hitter up. People hate this idea, but it's an interesting concept, right? Hey, in these big moments, put the biggest people up there. Create more opportunity for a big moment. And I think what Survivor has struggled with is Operation Italy is a great naturally occurring big moment. And Survivor is desperate for a way to consistently manufacture stuff this good. And unfortunately, so many of their experiments have failed to do so. Nothing has really done it. Maybe, I mean, I like Sweat versus Savvy. That's kind of an early gimmick, right, to create something like this. But everything with Party Rock Island, every journey, they're trying to create a golden at bat, and it never works. See, that wasn't so bad.
That wasn't so bad.
Baseball's the best.
No, that was a good comparison. I actually like the idea for a golden bat in baseball. I think it adds an element of strategy to the game in terms of when you want to use that golden bat player. If you want to do it earlier in the game or like as your last hitter of the entire thing.
The idea, to be clear, is it would be at the last moment, right? It's like you
Oh,
get
I thought
to
you could put them in at any point.
No. It's a win or go home thing.
It's your shot in the dark.
Yeah, it is kind of a shot in the dark. To come back to the show, I do want to point out the jury recognizes and comments in the moment this was Andy's move. Saul, I think, is the one who points out Andy flipped.
He didn't say that Andy flipped. He said Andy flipped again, which
Ah.
not only tells you that Andy's getting credit for this move, but they're retroactively giving him credit for the flip against Sierra at the final 11. So that gave me a lot more confidence in Andy's winning prospects. I feel like prior to this week, my big worry with Andy was he could make it far, but it seems like people don't really respect him. Last week, Genevieve hopped in confessional and described Andy and Sue as the easy beats of the cast. And now I think you could put Andy up against anyone in a final tribal and he has a fighting chance no matter what. Potentially wins in most combinations. It kind of depends how the situation shakes out. But we'll
Yeah.
get into that next week with our final tribal predictions.
Yes,
Quick epitaph for Caroline.
please.
R.I.P. Caroline. Sue's only hope for a jury vote.
I think that's completely fitting.
Caroline is the only reason why Sue might not be a zero vote finalist. Like I said earlier, I don't think she was the best character of the season. She's kind of game body, and we don't see a lot of personality there. But she's a great player of Survivor. There's really no denying that.
She has a really lovely outlook and approach to the game, which I can't stress enough. I just really appreciate that.
And I think one of the biggest positives for me in Caroline's elimination is the fact that she was not even the original target of this vote. If anyone else other than Rachel wins individual immunity, Caroline probably survives this round. So I feel like she was always putting herself in spots where there was a bigger threat in front of her.
Yeah.
It just so happened that the big threat won immunity at Final 7.
Yeah.
Would you want to see Caroline come back in the future?
I mean, I always feel cruel saying this, but there's a lot of players like Caroline, and she was lovely, but I don't think she really got to make her mark or enough of a mark to earn herself another chance to come make another mark, you know? I would not be upset if she came back, but I don't think she has enough of a distinguishing factor to really earn a seat.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't think she's at the top of the list. Going to winners and losers. Can we start with winners and just come to an agreement here?
I bet we have the same winner and loser, man. It's hard not to see them. Like, is it Andy and Teeny?
Yeah, it's Andy
Yeah.
and Teeny.
Yeah.
Can I hype up Andy some more? I feel like this is the Andy episode. I need to give him all the flowers possible.
Yep.
So, in my opinion, Andy's playing the best game on the entire island.
I think that's fair. This move is so good. I don't disagree.
I think if you look at his resume, yes, the premiere was disastrous for him, but he is the only player remaining in the game that was a part of the consensus plan at every tribal council that he's attended. Rachel has been left out of numerous votes. Sue has been left out. Teeny's been left out almost as many times as they have been included. And then Genevieve and Sam were struggling the last couple rounds. Andy is the player with consistent agency all season. And not only was he in the majority, but he has staples on his resume. He leads the Sierra vote at Final 11, and he knocks out Caroline at Final 7. And on top of all that, I think Andy has been great in managing his own threat level, where his name has not been written down on parchment since the Rome vote at the Mergatory. Like,
Yeah.
he's been very safe while working in the majority. So
Yeah.
it's a great game. I still question if he'll win the whole thing. I really hope he does because I think he's the best player here. But if he wins the season, there's a good chance he'll be making it into my top 50 players of all time. But
Wow.
I don't
Wow.
think he'll win, and because of that, he'll probably not make it on the list. Do you want to talk about Teeny? I talked about my fantasy pick. It makes sense for you to talk about yours.
Well, Teeny is unfortunately in a position where their emotionality and their lack of alliances, right? They've got allies, but they don't have close ones. They're sure looking like a no vote finalist.
I think there's a hope for Teeny to get jury votes. Not enough to win, but I
No.
think Teeny's tight with Saul and Teeny's tight with Sierra. So those are two people who I could see voting for Teeny depending on who they're up against.
Yeah, even the tightness with Saul, I could see Saul voting for somebody else based on merit, not closeness, right? I don't think Saul is somebody to go based on a relationship. Yeah, I mean, just a tough look from Teeny this week. Hopefully they get it reined in for next week and are able to be shocked back into a more conservative frame of mind. But I don't know. We'll see.
And I think you could also argue that this week was very bad for Teeny in terms of their storyline in a potential final tribal. When you sit at the end, you need to paint a picture of yourself and tell a story to the jury.
Yeah.
And prior to this week, Teeny's story was I wasn't really the strategic mastermind. I wasn't leading votes every week, but I'm a people person and I connected with everybody here.
Right.
And after calling out Sam and making fun of him in front of all of the other players, that argument doesn't really hold the same weight. Caroline
Right.
is going to go back to the jury and tell those players, like Sierra, that Teeny was bashing Sam for kind of outside the game reasons.
Yeah.
I think they'll have a tough time making a winning case. Who is your honorable mention?
My honorable mention is Operation Maple, a series of World War II operations by the British SAS in support of the Anzio landings in Italy. So this is an Italian operation in World War II starting on January 7th of 1944. Operations Thistledown, Driftwood, and Baobab were a series of operations, collectively Operation Maple, to destroy a bunch of bridges and rail lines around Terni, Orvieto, which is a beautiful town, Urbino, Fabriano, Ancona, and Rimini. All of that in effort to successfully invade Italy and liberate Rome from the fascists. So, 16 troopers. That's all it took. Kind of cool.
And that is just because the two names are similar.
It's an operation in Italy, and Operation Italy was the focal point of the episode, so I Googled Italian operations.
Okay, so there were many Italian operations on the board for the potential honorable mention this week.
But Operation Maple is the overarching operation.
Oh, okay. Wow.
It in turn was part of Operation Shingle.
The umbrella operation?
Yeah, I guess they nested them. I don't know.
Okay, so we'll need to figure out where Operation Italy fits into that nest of Italian operations.
I don't think they call it Operation Italy when the goal is to invade Italy, but that might be a little too on the nose. But that's okay. That's my honorable mention is Operation Maple. So what is your dishonorable mention?
So my dishonorable mention goes to my Survivor winner rankings. So
Wow.
I'm in the process now of releasing my top 50 players of all time, which you can find that on our podcast or YouTube on all platforms. My next project that I want to do is a ranking of every winning game in the history of the show.
Yep.
So I'm starting to do my research and I started recording some of the rankings. And I started at the bottom with number 47 because I'll include the winner of this season.
Right.
And I thought to myself, hey, these bottom winners are some of like the most atrocious victories in the history of the show. I'm safe to record these ahead of time because what are the chances that the winner of Survivor 47 ends up being a bottom tier winner? And now I think that's where we're headed with Rachel.
Wow.
I think Rachel has no excuse to not make it to Final Four because she has a vote block for the Final Six and an idol for the Final Five. And then all she needs is fire making to make it to the end and potentially win.
And she's been winning challenges.
I have so many issues with Rachel's game. I can hit on a couple of them for you. I feel like this is a very luck-based game, one where she's constantly relying on production interference to carry her from round to round. But even before that, In the pre-merge, she loses her number one ally in Annika and the second god of tribal council.
Mhm.
Then in the post-merge, you have that split tribal where Rachel's bags are packed. She is about to get voted out of the game, and she's saved because Saul finds an advantage and plays it on her.
Yep.
And you could say that Saul played that advantage because he's tight with Rachel. In reality, he played that because you had Rachel and 4 Tuku members surrounding her. Like, this wasn't a I love Rachel move. It was, we got to knock out a Tuku move. So I feel like she gets really lucky there. Later on, the post merge, she's not included on the Sierra boot. She's not included on the Saul boot. And she's not included on the Caroline boot. This is someone who has not held much strategic agency all season. And it seems like she's perfectly set up for the end game. One, because of her reputation, which is credit to Rachel. Like, people seem to respect her and see her as a threat. But two, because she has all of these advantages that were essentially handed to her. She got the vote block because she went on a journey where she had a 1 out of 3 chance of picking the right rock. She
Right.
got her idol because she bid on the fries where the idol was hidden in her food. There's just a lot of luck-based scenarios here, and that's not always an end-all be-all for me. Like, over the summer, we covered Cook Islands where Yule was a winner who benefited a lot from production interference.
Yep.
But outside all of that interference, Yule was a dominant figure, someone calling the shots from the majority. Rachel has all of the negatives with the production interference, but none of the positives in her strategic game. I
Right.
think she's someone that will likely win and go down as a bottom 10 winner in my books. So that's my Rachel rant to end the episode, even though she hasn't won the season yet. I'm just that confident in the winner pick. Any takes on that? I know I kind of rambled there for a while.
I like Rachel. There is a lot of luck in her game. We'll see. I mean, I think you're getting a little worried. The finale doesn't start for another 6 days. So, we'll see. It could be Andy's game to lose, you know? Andy could just be starting.
If Andy wins, that will warm my heart. We got 2 episodes left. It's technically a 2-part finale, except those episodes come out 1 week apart. So in my mind, this is just the penultimate episode and then the finale the following week.
Yeah. Well, tune in next week and we will make our finale predictions and we'll see whether luck or skill wins out Survivor 47.